You're watching Writer to Writer Interviews. Hi, you're watching Writer to Writer Interviews. I'm Casey Bell, host of Writer to Writer Interviews. I had the wonderful pleasure of interviewing author Nancy Christie. I got the chance to ask her questions about her journey and experience of writing and publishing her books. I also got the chance to talk to her about her latest book, Peripheral Visions, a book filled with short stories that all have to do with seeing something at the side of your eye and making sure you pay attention to it. Let's get into the conversation with author Nancy Christie. Author Nancy Christie is a writer of fiction and non-fictional books. She has published 2 collections of short stories. Traveling Left of Center and Other Stories was a runner-up in the 2016 Best Indie Book by Shelf Unbound. Her second collection of short stories, Peripheral Visions and Other Stories, was a second-place winner in the 2018 Royal Palm Literary Awards competition. Her short stories have appeared in numerous literary publications, including Ariel Chart, One Person's Trash, and Two Cities Review, just to name a few. She has also authored 3 nonfiction books, the inspirational motivational book, The Gifts of Change, and 2 books for writers, Rut-Busting Book for Writers and Rut-Busting Book for Authors. Both of her books for writers have won multiple awards. She is also a member of the American Society of Journalists and Authors, as well as the Florida Writers Association, and the proud founder of the annual Celebrate Short Fiction Day. She also teaches writing workshops and gives talks at conferences, libraries, and schools. She has also appeared on blogs and broadcasts and print media discussing writing-related topics. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you author Nancy Christie. Okay, so you recently written and published a book called Peripheral Visions. It's filled with a few short stories. One of the short stories is actually called Peripheral Visions. So why did you choose to name the entire book according to the one short story as opposed to all of them? I mean, as opposed to another one, or as opposed to just giving it a name that has nothing to do with any of the short stories?
Part of it is because the idea of peripheral visions, which is something that you see out of the corner of your eye and you may choose to ignore it when actually it's something that you should follow. That's more or less a theme that runs through all the short stories in one way or another. The other thing is I thought it was an intriguing title, Peripheral Visions. It's kind of like, what's that about? And it's also the same thing I did with actually my first collection, Traveling Left of Center. The title story, there's a story in it called Traveling Left of Center. So it's just, I don't know, I just ended up with it. It sounded right. When the collection came together, it wasn't that I decided on a theme, decided on a title, and then wrote the stories to fit. I write a lot of short stories. I just write a lot of short stories. So I started looking for short stories among the ones that were done that fit that idea of peripheral visions and following what you want to follow as opposed to what people tell you should do. And so, all the ones I put in there sort of all hung together in one way or the other, following that same theme. And it's funny because I'm actually working on another collection now. I'm about a third of the way. It's called the title of the collection is Doors and Windows, which came from a short story I wrote, which is called Doors and Windows. And so now I'm going back through all my short stories, looking for stories that are about doors, windows, because, a door can lead you in, a door can shut you out, a door can be access, it can be an exit. A window can be a way of showing you what other opportunities there are. So I'm working I have a lot of, I didn't realize how many short stories I had sitting on my computer that I haven't even tried submitting anywhere. So now it's kind of like, all right, let me go through these. Yeah, that would fit. So now let me take it out. Let me dust it up. Let me see what it needs. And maybe I'll end up with another collection. You know, it's just kind of fun to do. It's a nice break from my regular job of copywriting. So
Well, I think you've made me conscious now. I think every time I see something in my peripheral vision, I'm gonna pay more attention to it.
yeah, you know, you almost have to, and you know, we have a tendency. The main character in the short story says, you know, people go through life with blinders on. They get on a road, and that's the road they follow.
Mm.
But what if that's not the road you should be following? And sometimes it's like those serendipitous occurrences that can shift you into a direction that you didn't realize you wanted to go all along. You know, that's sometimes we make the choice, sometimes the choice is made for us, but you know, it can just be very interesting. Let's put it that way.
So the short stories that are in the book, are they based on real life stories? Are they completely fictional? Or are they um, embellished true stories,
Oh,
or a mixture?
I think a little bit of everything. I think most fiction writers, nothing is ever completely made up. Somewhere down the line, if it's not something we experienced, it's something that we saw somebody else experience, or something maybe we had a little taste of, and then in the story we go into it in more depth. So, you know, depending on which story it is, it, you know, really varies. Like, for instance, there's a short story in the collection called Pandora's Box, and that's one of the ones that actually came from a dream. And the opening of the story is actually a description of the dream, where in my dream I'm watching these two adults walking under the water, pushing a boulder to the edge. And then I woke up. I have no idea where that came from. And but it was like, and I'm not a very visual person. I tend to be, you know, I'm a more word person versus visual, but something about it just stayed with me. And so I just used that as the opening and went off with it. And nobody was more surprised than me when I got the story finished and I got to the end and I'm like, oh, that's what it was all about, you know. So sometimes I know where something came from, and sometimes it's like a little gift, you know, it just comes out of nowhere, and you roll with it, because if you don't, it'll bother you, it'll irritate you until you deal with it.
It's funny you say that. I have no clue how it's going to ever get produced, but I actually wrote a short film that came from a dream that
Mm-hmm.
was too good to just like, oh, whatever. You know, it was too good to not do something with it. I'll just say
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I don't know if it'll ever be produced, but I definitely have had the experience before where I've had dreams and I'm like, I can't leave this. I can't keep it to myself. So I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm pretty sure
And
maybe,
I think we're meant to do that. You know,
yeah.
I think that's what makes us writers or artists or musicians. We're meant to pay attention to when those things happen. There's a reason why you had that dream. There's a reason why you remember that dream, why you felt so strongly about it. And, you know, I always look at it this way: whatever ultimately happens, if it gets published, if it gets produced in your case, um, that's almost secondary. The primary thing is, can you get it done to the point where you're satisfied with it? And then after that, okay, then whatever happens, that's the icing on the cake. But it's how you feel about it when it's done to your, I mean, I, I've got a ton of stories that I've never submitted, I've never been published or whatever, but when I read them, I'm like, this was good. This is pretty good. I'm happy with it. I should probably do something with it. But I think we should write first, or work on something first for ourselves, you know, to satisfy our own level, which hopefully is a high level. And then after that, okay, now let me throw it out into the world and see what happens. But I don't know about you, but I never throw anything out there unless I'm pretty satisfied with it. You know,
Yeah.
even if I take it to my writing group and they all love it, if I'm not happy, it ain't going nowhere. It's staying home till I get it to my satisfaction.
Um, so do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, do you have any unique methods of curing it?
Um, Writer's block. Sometimes I'll get stuck on a section, or I'll get stuck. I won't know how to open something. I used to write a lot of magazine articles, and the writer's block I would get is I would have all the information. I would know how I'm going to organize the article, satisfy everybody, but I couldn't come up with a good opening. And if I don't have a good opening, then it's like really hard to go any further. And usually if that happens, I walk away. I go do something physical. I mow the grass, take a walk, run the sweeper, something that requires no brain power whatsoever. 90% of the time when you walk away, that's when it pops into your head, you know, that great opening line, or the way you're going to deal with a character situation or whatever. It's almost like you have to switch off, and then it's like you're rebooting your brain, I guess would be a way of doing it. You know, it's the other thing I have learned is to write every day. Don't let days go. The harder it is to get started. It's like letting the car sit in the garage for months on end. It is not going to turn over when you put that ignition key in. It's just going to sit there. So it's you just do it. I mean, every day doesn't have to be a good writing day, but every day should be a writing day.
Awesome. One of the things I do, if most of the times I know my ending, so I'll start out with the ending, and the rest will come to me as I'm writing it, or different bits and pieces, and whatever comes to me. Sometimes I write it out of order, and then I'll put it all together. But definitely walking away and doing something that has nothing to do with writing or even reading gets my brain thinking. So thanks for that.
I'm amazed when you say that you know the ending. You and I work actually then opposite, because I never know the ending. Of course, you know, I'm writing mostly short stories, but nevertheless, it's kind of like, you know, I start writing, I don't know how it's going to end up. Sometimes I don't even know what the point is. I don't always know what a character's going to do, or what the theme is. And then when the ending comes, it's like, oh, you know, then it's just like, oh, there it is. But yeah, that's really interesting that you do it that way. And do you have any trouble if you already know the ending? Do you ever change the ending after? So if you know the ending and then you start writing whatever it is you're writing, do you ever find out when you get to the ending doesn't fit anymore, or does it always fit?
Maybe once or twice, the ending wasn't the ending. A new ending shows up. Like how do I say this? It's like the characters themselves tell me this is not what we want. And I'm like, wait, this doesn't. No, who are you? I'm the writer. But it it sounds weird. But it's like when I hear it, I'm like, even though I don't care for that ending, it actually does. It's better, because one of the things I enjoy about one of my favorite things watching television are detective shows. So my favorite thing is to not know what's going on
Mm-hmm.
and to actually they give me the beginning, and then when I get to the ending, I'm like, that didn't. So when I get an ending that goes, but that has nothing really to do with, and I'm not, I wasn't expecting that. I said, well, then I'm going to do that because I want to give that audience that feeling of, oh, I wasn't even expecting that ending to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes it'll change, but when I write, it's because, how do I say, I'm aware of a problem. And even though the solution I want may not be the solution most people go after, that's why I know the ending, because I'm writing to show a solution to a problem that if we went that way, life would be easier, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
then I'm writing, I gotta figure out how does the problem, even though I know the problem, how does the problem occur naturally without it making it look too fictional? Then how do I get to the ending without moving too fast, without moving too slow? And even though it's fiction, if I'm not writing a fantasy, how to keep it semi-realistic in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I do get stuck in between, then I'll just write the ending. Um, and then I'll move around. And then, like I said, if the ending changes, I'll change with it. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty open. I don't say this is, I'm the writer. And, it sounds weird, but I let the characters talk to me and I let them figure out their story. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, but that's not every book like that. But a
Mm-hmm.
small amount of my books, I wrote the ending first. Well, not I didn't write it first. When I got stuck, I started writing the ending, and then moved my way back.
Hmm.
But
That's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Wonder if I'll ever do it that way.
it's every. The funny thing is, every time I do it, I procrastinate at it because I feel like no, I don't want to do it that way. I just want to go in order. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm like, but it's worked, so let me just go ahead and do it. And then I do it, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I should have just did that in the beginning because it always works for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just suggest that's if like I said, if you know your ending of
Right.
somewhat. Because like I
Mm-hmm.
said, it's there's a delete button. You can always change the ending if it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
end up, doing um but this is a question I want to ask you for writers who might be reading this. Um how do I say this? Lots of times we share with people we trust, about, I want to do something other than the 9 to 5. And unfortunately, people go, "Oh, keep your day job. Oh, please, you need to go back to college, or you're not good
Mm-hmm.
enough to do that. Who do you think you are?" And so there are a lot of writers out there who have all these film ideas, who have all these book ideas, who have all these song ideas, but unfortunately, they told someone, and someone told them, stick to your day job, whatever, or they themselves told themselves, "I'm not adequate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no Shakespeare," or they compare themselves to other writers. And so when I see people writing and publishing and producing, I always wonder what inspired you, or who inspired you, or where did you get the courage to share this gift of writing? Because not everyone is, how do I say, brave enough to do so. So
Mm-hmm.
where did you find that bravery of deciding to write and publish your works?
Well, I kind of backed into it in a way. I had always been a writer, okay, ever since second grade, but I never thought of it as a profession. I never thought about it as a viable income source. It was just something I did. Okay, it was something I had to do. Um, and then I was married at the time, and my husband had his own business, and he needed somebody to handle the office stuff. So I'm like, okay, I could do that. So that was my job, as part of the income producing part of the family. And I accidentally honestly, it was an accident. I accidentally started writing for a business newspaper. our local business newspaper because she called me wanting an ad, and somehow our signals got crossed, and I thought she was calling me to ask me if I wanted to write an article about running a family business. So, after 15 minutes of talking at cross purposes, she's like, okay, well, do you want to do that article? And I'm thinking, most of our customers were husband and wife operations. And I said, sure, I'll call a couple of my customers. To me, that was like, how hard can this be? I was always a writer. So I did that, and she was happy with it, and she asked me to do a couple more. And so pretty soon I was writing for the newspaper while I was working for full time. And then I switched to, and that was back in the day when you had a lot of newspapers in town. I switched to another newspaper that was doing more community type, profiles of people and the happy stories. I'm not an investigative reporter. I don't do politics, and I know nothing about sports. So it kind of puts me in what we used to call the chicken dinner circuit, right? You wrote about, the fun things that were happening in the community, but I liked it because it allowed me to go listen to stories. I think of myself as a storyteller. So working for the newspaper was telling, instead of made up stories, telling true stories. And everybody was happy with it. Hunky-dory, you get some money, you're happy. And then I started writing for business magazines. It was purely accidental. Never thought of writing a book. That was never a dream. That was never a goal. I never thought I was good enough. I don't have a degree. I'm missing all the components that you're supposed to have, that they tell you have to have. Okay. So, but what happened was in 1999, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and she handled it much better than I did. And my parents were living in Florida at the time. So I wanted to be very supportive. I wanted to be very encouraging, right? And of course, I'm all devastated because I knew this was not good. So I would journal and get it all out, and then call my mother when I was, in better control. And so over the period of the several-year battle that she had with this cancer, I was writing journaling. I was journaling a lot. Okay. And initially it was all very, very personal, very, just narrow focused. And then the entries became a little more like an essay, like where you're looking for the message. What is, it kept coming back to, what am I supposed to learn from this experience? What is God trying to teach me, right? And so I ended up with a number of really, really solid essays. A couple of them got published, and connected with a publisher who decided to bring the book out. It was a complete shock to me. It was like, I didn't think about it. And it was really funny. It wasn't until a couple months before the book was released. The book came out in 2004. It came out the year before my mother died. It finally dawned on me, because up till that point, everything I had written for publication were articles. Okay, articles on how to run a business, articles on market. They were not personal, and they were about other people. It was going to be released, and it finally dawned on me, people are going to be reading about something very intensely personal. And I got scared. I was scared because you have all of these big names. This book sort of falls under the category of inspirational / motivational, right? So you've got all these big name authors, and here's me, a nobody, no platform. Of course, in 2004, nobody had a platform, but I thought, who am I to be telling people, trying to give people messages how to deal with change? Who am I? I'm nobody. I'm no PhD. I'm no counselor. I'm no nobody. I'm just me in little old Youngstown, Ohio. And I had to get over being scared, I'll tell you that much, because you can't be scared. And for some reason the book connected with people. I mean, I don't know. It was, so then that was kind of like, okay. I mean, I'm sure it's very useful to have a degree and to have all that education. But in the end, it all comes down to, can you write? Can you get your message across? Can you connect with people? Presumably, can you spell and know grammar? But, that's really what it comes down to, And if you have the ability, if you have the gift, the rest of it can be taught. If you're not entirely sure when you're supposed to use a comma, you can learn that, but you cannot learn how to write.
Right.
That's my feeling, and then after that, it was just, and as for the freelancing, after the divorce, I thought, well, I'm already making money writing articles. I'll just keep doing it. And I did, and it actually paid pretty well until the recession, and then it stopped paying really well. But by that time, I was doing copywriting for ad agency. Didn't matter, it's writing's writing, So I basically spend every day, 7 days a week, writing something or other. But I think you have to have confidence in yourself, but you also have to know what you need to learn.
Yes.
Never be so confident that you think you can't get better. That's the other thing too.
Of course. Always in any industry, you can be better. But I believe, aside from degrees in college, experience is the best education out there. Because, most psychologists or therapists become that because they've experienced something, like if they're a grief counselor, or if they're like physical therapists, most times they've already experienced it at home with family. So now they're trying to use everything they learned to help someone else. So if you, first of all, condolences to you and your mother transitioning. But that experience in itself is enough education to write on anything, fiction, nonfiction, self-help books, whatever the case may be, even in grieving, because, you've dealt with it. So you can share your experience, and it very well can help someone else who's going through the same thing right now. So I think that I'm excited and happy that, I think for most, right, I know for me, it was an accident as well. I didn't plan, this was not in my plans anyways. But I remember the first thing I did write was a song. My brother was playing video games, and I don't remember the game, but it had this tune that was very repetitive. And I just decided to write a song with it, and I started singing it. And my sister and brother was like, "What are you singing?" Like, this song? I'm like, "No, I just made it up." And ever since then, I've been writing, and it was never, even when, you're in elementary and middle school and people saying, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'm a writer. That wasn't even though that's what I was doing already, it didn't, two and two didn't come together yet. I didn't really think that that's something I should be or could be. But I think most people who are successful in whatever area, it was a mistake, so to speak, But I do believe our childhood tells us what we're supposed to be, but we don't really pay attention to it. And I think our parents don't really notice that well, and teachers don't either. So they don't help us and guide us and say, "Oh, wow, you're writing so much, this is probably something you want to think about." And so then they just say, "Just go to college and get a job." And so then that's what we do. And then what we were doing, we throw it away because we're not even realizing that's what we should be doing. So I thank you for that story, because there are so many people out there, not just in writing, who may listen to this, but in any industry, who realizes what they were supposed to be doing. They knew it their whole life. They just, as I guess you can say, it was in their peripheral vision. and they didn't even pay attention to it. So on
Exactly.
your,
Well, and I think the other thing is too, people get hung up on the idea that it only has value. Okay, so if it's not going to earn me, maybe for whatever reason that they need to keep to bring in the money, to take care of the family, whatever, that doesn't mean that it's wrong of you to set aside time to pursue that particular creative gift. It doesn't matter whether you make any money at it. If you were given the gift, you should use it. Maybe it's not going to amount to anything from a financial perspective, but that's not the only measurement either. Not everybody. I mean, I had to work at our business. That kept the roof over our head. Was only after the divorce that I had the freedom, but by that time I had already built up the baseline for being self-employed. But there's a lot of people who think, well, I'm being selfish if I spend a couple hours on the weekend painting or writing a screenplay, because it's never going to go anywhere, and that's being selfish. No, it's not. If you have the gift, give it the time. You're the only person who can do that particular thing that particular way. And then if something ultimately comes out of it where you could devote more time to it, great. But even if you can't, you still should pursue it to some degree, to whatever degree you can at that moment.
it reminds me of, actually, I can't remember his full name. Francis is in there somewhere, I think. The writer of Star Spangled Banner. He was
Francis Scott Key.
Yes. So way back in the day, they thought, you had one job and that was it. There was no such thing as multiple streams of income back in those days. So he was a lawyer and he wrote poetry on the side. And originally, the Star Spangled Banner was a poem, and he published it in a newspaper. And they thought that that was the only poem he ever wrote in his life. And then when he died and they cleaned out his house, they found a whole bunch of poetry, and they ended up publishing it in a book afterwards. And it's kind of sad because he didn't have the mindset to do that while he was alive. So he never really got the chance to see the joy that people had reading his poems, because they taught him, you do one job and that's it, you do nothing else. Mm-hmm. Even though he clearly had a joy for writing and he was good at it, his mindset was, I'm a lawyer, so I can't be a poet either. Too, I have to do one or the other. And so I'm just hoping that this shows people that you really can do more than one thing. If you think about it, you can really, there's nothing stopping you from being a poet and a lawyer, because, but we have that wrong mindset that you have to choose one job, do it, and that's it. And I'm thankful now that I see that's just not right. And one of my main goals in doing, I started a writer-to-writer interview blog, was to hopefully get writers to realize you can keep your job. You don't have to quit right now, but still study whatever art you have, or whatever side job you're thinking about. You don't have to, you can do more than one. So definitely, I was thinking of him. So on your journey to writing and publishing, whether you can think of one or two, or if it's just one, of anyone who gave you advice on this journey, what was it? Well, good advice, I should say, because we get a lot of advice from people. And so something that really you were thankful that you received it, and what was it? And if you remember who it was, and what did they say?
Things are just getting good. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this message.
What do you do when the hand that life deals you isn't the one you wanted? In Peripheral Visions and other stories, the characters choose to play the best game they can with the cards they received. From humorous to serious, the 20 stories in this collection explore the range of human emotions, underpinned by the hope that life will get better if they can just hold on and stay strong. Peripheral Visions and Other Stories, written by Nancy Christie. Available now.
And we are back. Let's get back into the conversation with author Nancy Christie.
So, on your journey to writing and publishing, whether you can think of one or two, or if it's just one, of anyone who gave you advice on this journey, what was it? Well, good advice, I should say, because we get a lot of advice from people.
Oh, yeah.
So something that really you were thankful that you received it, and what was it? And if you remember who it was, and what did they say?
You know, things have changed so much since the first book came out in 2004 to now. I mean, if you think back to 2004, we didn't even have social media.
Right.
So, you know, from a business standpoint, I had to learn about, you know, marketing, and then constantly relearn and expand ways of doing things. But, you know, I thought a lot about this over the years, and this isn't necessarily about writing books, but this is about following your dream, okay? It's the idea that you shouldn't wait, that you shouldn't put things off until you retire, blah, blah, blah. And years and years ago, when my kids were young, and my son is now 42, so when my kids were young, I had gotten a book called The Writer on Her Work, and it was a compilation of essays from women writers about the craft of writing, the impact it had on their life. In some cases, it was a story about a particular incident in their life, but it was always connected to their life as a writer. And the one that had the biggest impact on me was a selection of diary entries from a woman called Michelle Murray, that after she passed, her husband had contributed them to the book. And what happened was, you know, and this was back in the 50s, she was married, she had a couple of kids, she was writing poetry on the side, but, you know, her primary thing was, and back in the 50s, being a homemaker was a full-time occupation. And her big goal was to actually get a book published. And she did. I made some notes about it. She was doing some, you know, individual poems and that, writing some children's stories. And the year that she had her first children's book published, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Back in the 50s, that's a death sentence, okay? And, you know, as you're reading through her diary entries, because it takes you from when she first got married until she dies, you know, she's talking about her goal, but always with the idea that, you know, at some point I'll get to this, at some point I'll get to this. And she was saying, I saved a line out of it. She said, I need time to write my poetry since I'm coming into my very own slowly. There should be time for this, and there won't be, and nothing will replace that. And that was like the whole message was time. You know, her book of poetry was not published till after she died. And it had made such a big impact on me because at the time my kids were young. I'm working full-time in the business and thinking, I'll write sometime, I'll write sometime, I'll write sometime. And there was like several years where I wasn't doing any writing at all, you know. This is before I started writing for magazines. And that hit me like a 2x4 because it's the idea that you don't know you're going to have time. I mean, not to get all morbid, but we don't know, especially now with COVID. Yeah. You don't know that you're going to have time. You don't know that you can put it off. So do it now. And that was something that has stayed with me for all these years. You know, don't, if you were given something to do, given a gift, don't assume you have 60, 70, 80 years to use it. Do it now. Do it now, no matter what happens with it, because this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that made such a big impression on me. And even when I would write stories and they wouldn't get published and they would come back and blah, 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 you know, the drill. It was the idea that, you know, the publishing isn't the thing. The writing is the thing. The publishing is extra.
Right.
And it's just the idea that you don't know. And there might be the one thing that you write is the one thing that is going to most connect with even just one other person, even just one person. They're going to read that and it's just going to do something for them. That could happen, but it's not going to happen unless you write it, you know. So yeah, that's I've just tried to keep reminding myself of that, because, you know, life does have a way of getting in our way, you know, and then we say, well, I can't do this now because there's other things, but you can't. You just can't. You have to do it now.
Definitely. I always say also you shouldn't wait because you don't know. The best way I can say it is, if I said, I don't know, 5 years ago, oh, I'll wait 10, 15 years from now before I open up a Toys R Us. You know, it's like you never know what will be here 5, 10 years ago from now in the future. And I know we think everything is going to last forever, and everybody is going to stay alive, and every place is going to stay open, and everything is still going to be in existence. But every place, person, and thing at some point in time has its expiration date. And you don't want to wait till that's done, because now whatever it was you thought you were going to do, you can't do it. So I definitely learned the hard way. I wrote a book, and the characters in the book take a I guess you can call it a reunion vacation to the Bahamas. And I remember doing research on the Bahamas and finding out that one of the main attractions in the Bahamas is there was a pastor, Dr. Miles Monroe, who his church was major, blah, blah, blah. So I put that in the book, and I was like, I guess I didn't feel confident enough to publish it because the book I already had published wasn't selling well. So I was like, oh, I'll wait until I, you know, get some more money to do some PR and to do this and do that. And then I forget what year it was, but unfortunately the plane he was on crashed and he passed away. And it was like, oh, I was like, not that there was a chance that I could have gotten him the book while he was alive and he could have read it, but that still was a chance that could have happened that I missed, because here I am waiting for something. And so that taught me right then and there, you don't know what tomorrow is, so there's no reason to wait for tomorrow. And I think that's similar to the story of Francis Scott Key's. Unfortunately, it's after they die that everyone gets to see their works, but they never got a chance to see the love that people have of their works. And anyone who's listening, I hope you realize that there is, not everyone is going to like your writing, but there is an audience out there for you. And I told someone, she was like, oh, I think I'm a writer, but I don't think I'm good enough. And I forget what she said. I said, there's an audience out there for you. I said, they've waited long enough. Don't let them wait anymore. And she was like, thank you. And I was like, you're welcome. I said, do it. And that's something, not just in writing, but in everything. There is an audience waiting for you. There's someone out there waiting for you to do what it is that's on your mind to do. And it may not seem like you won't have everything you need, but you do have at least one thing you need to get started. At least that. So get started now, and as you move forward, whatever else you need will come to you without you even realizing it. And so That is,
Yeah, that's so true. And that whole idea of how we're always measuring ourselves.
yes.
I'm not good enough. Somebody else is better than me. Somebody else publishes more than me, sells more books than me, whatever, you know, somebody else has a degree. I don't have a degree. I mean, the truth is every writer is on a journey working towards perfection. Okay. There isn't a writer alive who started out perfect and stayed perfect. Okay. So we're all getting better. So that's the first thing to remember. But the other thing is, don't try very hard not to measure yourself. Know that you always, I mean, we always need to improve certain things. That's the technical side of being a writer. But if you have the desire, then the desire is going to take you through the learning process. But don't decide ahead of time you're not good enough. You don't know, you know. You owe it to yourself to
Say that again. You owe it to yourself.
to give it a shot and to keep going, because you're going to give it a shot, and guess what? You're going to get rejected. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, the percentage of acceptances is like so teeny tiny. That doesn't mean you're no good. It just means you keep going. You know, it's like anything else. You keep going. And as long as you keep going, then your odds keep getting better and better that it might get published. You might find somebody who reads it and it connects with them, whatever. But you know, you have to keep going. Don't decide you're not good enough from the very beginning. You know, you're not perfect, but
Mm.
you're better than somebody who doesn't have the gift at all.
Every time I hear the word rejected, I remember I went to this audition a while ago, and we were in the waiting room waiting to be called in, and this girl was saying how she went to this audition, and the casting director said, you know, don't beat yourself up if you know we tell you no. She said, decades ago, know that I rejected Barbara Streisand. And so what she was basically saying is that look where she is now, and yet I told her no, I didn't want her. And so she was saying you're going to be rejected in life, but it doesn't mean you're not good. It just means that's not whatever door you knocked on, it wasn't for you. That wasn't the right door. And so the rejection just means you got to keep knocking until you find the door that opens. And so, and it also humbles you, because if you get a yes every time, after a while, you're like, oh, I'm so great. You know, it kind of makes you realize you're great, but you're not, you know, great to the point to where you should get arrogant about it. So those are all 5 of my questions.
Well, they were all very good questions. They really made me think a lot about the process, you know, and what I've learned, what I still have to learn, you know, because it is a journey. And like every journey, you turn a corner and it's like, oh, okay, here's a little something in the roadway, and I have to learn how to deal with this. But I do believe that if you're given a gift, you owe it to whoever gave it to you to pursue it, because otherwise you're just spitting in the face of God and you're saying, no thanks, I don't want it. Well, that's pretty rude. So, you know, we definitely should. We definitely need to. So, but I've enjoyed talking about this.
Yes, I'm enjoying. I've had so far 2 of these interviews recently, and I enjoy learning how other writers unblock their writer blocks, how they became writers. They basically all start saying the same thing. They were writing since they were a child, and it just they said that the other 2 said the same thing. Someone else told them, "Hey, you're good at this," you know, and they decided to go ahead and do it. And this has been enjoyable for me.
Oh,
And
we all learn from each other.
yes, yes, we do. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Because we are a community. I think that's the other thing. We're not in competition with each other.
Right.
We're all a community, you know, and if you run into somebody in your field who looks at you as competition, okay, then you don't want that person in
Right.
your group. You know, you want people who are going to support you and share with you. But,
Well, you know, because I hear that a lot, you know, especially in the music world, this singer's better than that singer, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Now I say, well, no one's fingerprint is better than someone else's fingerprint. So every gift is just as unique as the fingerprint. So you should never compare or compete because you're unique, you know? So
I
I
love that. I never heard that metaphor. That is so good.
yeah. And we have, you know, in research, I realized we have a lot of uniqueness. Our handprints, our feet prints, our lip and tongue prints are unique. Um,
Hmm.
and when you die, the doctors can use your dental records to, if you don't have like an ID on you, they find your body, they can use your dental records. And then the irises in your eyes are completely unique. And
Wow.
I found out that police have in the past, our ear prints as well,
Huh.
unique. And detectives and police in the past have used lip, tongue, and ear prints to identify a witness or a suspect. So we were built to be unique, but unfortunately, we keep trying to be like everybody else.
Cookie cutter. Yeah.
So everything about us is telling us you are unique. You know, you are
Mhm.
really unique. Even identical twins share the same DNA, but they don't share fingerprints, feet prints, lip prints. All of those things are unique. So it's I've always I've learned a new metaphor for using animals. I think, look, if you really study animals, they really can teach you a lot about yourself. And living where I live now, there's they actually have somewhere a bird watch because there's hundreds of species of birds around here. And when I really started researching birds, I realized they're so unique, but they're still okay with it. You know,
Mhm.
I've never seen a Doug try to tweet instead of quack.
Mhm.
You know, oh, that bird is tweeting. I don't think I should be quacking. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen penguins try to glue some feathers on. You know, they're proud of who they are, and they never think that they're not a bird because they're different from all the others. And it made me as a human stop comparing myself to other humans, because it's like they're not better or worse than me. We're equal, yet we're still unique. So
Mhm.
um, I'm hoping people realize that and then just go for it. You know, take
Mhm.
that dive, knowing that you'll how do I say, you'll fail, but you're supposed to. I always, if you know,
That's true.
if we all quit um, after we fell the first time we started learning how to walk, no one would be walking. So we have to realize that's how life is. You can FELL and you can also FAIL. It doesn't mean quit. It just means you have to fall a few times before you get it right.
Mhm. No, you're absolutely right. Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I've enjoyed talking with you. It's always fun. So now I just have to remember all the brilliant things that I said so that I can tell them to myself when I start going down the wrong path. Because you know we all do that. You know,
Yes.
we all know what we're not supposed to do, and then we go ahead and we compare ourselves. So yeah, it's but it is. You gotta love what you're doing. That's what it comes down to.
Yes.
So
You enjoy it. It's not, I mean, it's work, but it's not, if that makes sense.
mhm. Yeah,
You
it's
won't,
pleasure. Yeah.
you won't be, oh, I gotta get up and go to work. You know, it'll be more like, oh, I get to go to work. Yes.
Mhm.
And that's much better than hating every day of the week other than Saturday.
Yeah. Exactly. I can't imagine spending 5 days a week doing a job that I absolutely despise. That would be horrible. And I feel sorry for the people who have to do that, because there
Right.
are people who have to do that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that they have to do that. But so in that respect, I guess we are privileged in that we can spend so much time doing something that we love that makes us feel good and fulfilled.
Thank you for watching Writer to Writer interviews. Well, that's all the time for this episode. We hope to see you again for our next episode. Thank you for watching Writer to Writer's interview, and I sure hope to see you again.